I was present in the community when Michael Brown was killed. I participated because I was invited by a member of DOJ to participate in meetings that were attended by Ferguson influencers, many of whom you now see on major shows, by DOJ representatives and the very law enforcement agents who were helping to conceal basically the execution of Michael Brown. And from that meeting, it became clear to me that DOJ's role in these instances is to swoop in, calm the natives, to introduce some reforms if needed, and then move on.
I think you mentioned it would be a 2-story indoor amusement park, charter school, and STEAM after school activities. What do you envision?
Right. Okay, now this is it. The actual 2 stories is basement and first floor. The basement is really the huge STEAM center. They got 10,000 square feet on the first floor, and the floors are cut out too on the inside. So you got like a 2-story kind of deal going on there. So the basement and the first floor is for edutainment, STEAM center, fun, and restaurants. We're gonna have 3 or 4 restaurants in there. We think that's very important.
Hi, I'm Janice Hazel. Thank you for joining us for Urban Interest. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get to it. License plate readers installed around Metro Detroit. New York Congressman George Santos to be charged with fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and migrants and asylum issues. We'll dive into these when we return from these messages. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
Question. Do you know of John Henrik Clark or Dr. Francis Cress Welsing? Have you ever heard of Mansa Musa? Or do you know the difference between Native Americans and First Americans? Or why the ancient Egyptians wore their hair in dreadlocks or clean shaven like the brothers do today? Or who were the Barbary pirates really? Hint, they didn't look like Johnny Depp. Or why Haiti has the lowest COVID rate and America the highest in the world. At UIN TV, we have the answer to these questions and much, much more because we are the keepers of our culture. Help us preserve this information and save it for your generations to come. Go to uintv.net. Click on a channel to support and subscribe today. Please do it now.
Right now, license plate readers are in a few different places across the state. Livingston, Monroe, and Jackson County are using this technology. License plate readers are not being used in Lansing, but Michigan State Police say they'll eventually be everywhere, including Metro Detroit.
State police recently began installing license plate readers in the metro area along some freeways.
CBS News Detroit's Jarroll Bailey explains where we can find them, how they work, and how they're beginning to become more and more common.
The next time you're driving along Southfield Freeway or I-96, you may notice one of these.
It takes a photo of a license plate and the back of a car. What it does is it goes in a database. Our database is actually kept with the manufacturer.
Michigan State Police recently starting a pilot project for license plate readers on highways in the metro area. With violent crimes taking place on highways, authorities believe the LPRs, coupled with other techniques like cell phone pings, is modern policing.
We can go into that database for that area, look up Toyota 4-doors. It's going to give us every one of them that went through there.
If all goes well, State Police plans to eventually get the readers placed all throughout the state.
Our eventual goal is to have license plate readers from the tip of the UP all the way down to the Ohio border on our freeway system.
License plate readers are becoming more and more common. Earlier this week in Canton, the Board of Trustees began discussing the idea of installing one at a busy part of town.
If you drove through an intersection where there's LPRs, which is throughout the state of Michigan now, including your freeways that we drive, your plate's going to be, a picture is going to be taken of your car and your plate.
For those concerned about data being shared when it comes to state police's LPRs, the system reportedly kicks the data out after a set time.
It's for 30 days and then they purge out automatically, because if a crime hasn't been reported within 30 days, there's really no sense in hanging on to it.
State Police wants locals to understand that although LPRs are becoming more and more notable, they've been around for years.
Casinos have license plate readers when you're coming in and out of the garage. Neighborhood watch groups are literally buying license plate readers for their neighborhoods.
In Wayne County, I'm Jarroll Bailey for CBS News, Detroit.
Road rage on Michigan's freeways is on the rise, along with other crimes that this technology can assist, and the Michigan State Police are deploying license plate readers in Metro Detroit in hopes that the cameras will deter criminals and bring down the number of shootings on Michigan's freeways. Now, the man who lied his way into a congressional seat in New York is being called on the carpet, finally. Jarroll Sanders, the Republican House representative, according to a Department of Justice press release, will be criminally charged by the Justice Department on a 13-count indictment.
To a developing story, a breaking story out of Capitol Hill revolving around the curious case of Representative Jarroll Sanders. As we're learning from our Fox 5 team in New York, that federal prosecutors will move forward with charges. I want to put up a tweet now from Fox Live now from Fox, our team here, as we continue to follow this story. As a breaking, federal prosecutors plan to file charges against New York Congressman Jarroll Sanders. They tell Fox 5 New York the charges are expected to be announced as early as tomorrow in the Eastern District in Brooklyn. Of course, this is very big news as early as tomorrow. The exact charges are unknown at this time, but Sanders has been under investigation for statements he made regarding campaign finances. To give you a little bit more detail, as that name has been in the news quite a bit recently, is Jarroll Sanders, and certainly relating back to his resume and what got him elected most recently in this cycle. Certainly a household name because of just the controversy surrounding his short time in office. He admitted to embellishment on his resume. Of course, there have been lots of calls for Sanders' resignation within his own party on the Republican side, and he's the subject of federal, state, and local investigations. Of course, we're learning through our Fox 5 team that federal prosecutors plan to file charges against the New York congressman as soon as tomorrow. That is certainly big news that we will follow here on Live Now from Fox.
Turning now to immigration and our borders, this week marks the end of the coronavirus restrictions on asylum that have allowed the U.S. to quickly expel migrants at the southern border for the last 3 years. The restrictions are often referred to as Title 42 because the authority comes from Title 42 of the 1944 public health law that allows curbs on migration in the name of protecting public health.
Mauritania. Because they don't speak English, we're using our cell phones with the translator app just to try to communicate. We do not speak the language, and we hear the American police. In our country, there is no security and threaten to kill every day. The message is getting across that all they want is security, and they feel unsafe.
Migration to Europe is becoming increasingly difficult, and they are externalizing their borders and forcing folks to remain on the continent in order to be processed and seek refuge in Europe.
Sion Gurmu is the legal director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration.
With those doors closing, a lot of African migrants have been forced into other options. And so one option is relying on permissive immigration policies in Ecuador, Brazil, or Guyana as an entry point for an incredibly difficult and dangerous journey by land towards Mexico and then onwards to the United States.
U.S. officials say there's been an influx of migrants at our border wall because Title 42 is ending. That's the law that allows people from a country where communicable diseases like COVID-19 are present. That law allows them to be removed and not allowed to enter the United States. The World Health Organization just downgraded the COVID-19 pandemic, saying it's no longer an emergency. That spurred new interest at crossing American borders, but that interest has been met with pushback.
Border externalization measures disproportionately impact Black migrants and fuel anti-Black racism. We have worked with several Black migrants traveling through Mexico who have unknowingly sought asylum in Mexico, a country that they felt unsafe in. But this is just another measure to absorb folks and stop them from being able to access the U.S. asylum system.
With Title 42 expiring, immigration is expected to soar. Many from Africa have been waiting in South America for months to get into the U.S., and anti-Black immigration measures has halted their access to the U.S. asylum process. We'll keep you up to date on this issue. Now, don't go anywhere. We'll be back after these messages with an exclusive with Herb Strather.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times with a global pandemic now approaching its third year. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. To see if you qualify, please visit. Call 313-388-9799 or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Diane Stewart. I'm a professor of religion and African American studies at Emory University, and I'm so delighted to be here at the Mother Shrine of the Black Madonna Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church in Detroit, Michigan, talking about my book, Black Women, Black Love, America's War on African American Marriage, and doing a book signing with this wonderful community. It has been an amazing visit, a historic visit for me as someone who's taught about the shrines of the Black Madonna, visited the shrine in Atlanta with my classes, but having my first opportunity to be here in person with this amazing church family. It has been such a wonderful experience of kinship, Black love, and togetherness. The Urban Information Network is the keepers of our culture.
We have an exclusive today with Herbert J. Strather, the chairman of Strather Associates, a real estate development and investment firm located right here in Detroit, which is responsible for more than $2 billion in real estate transaction. And it is a multi-level conglomerate consisting of real estate acquisitions, investment, development, education, and property management. His investment group has operated the Motor City Casino and other casino endeavors in Massachusetts, and Lotto Soul, which licenses Motor City artists' images to state lotteries. Devoted to empowering young people to reach their optimum potential, he is a dynamic supporter of Optimus International. His efforts have led to donations of over $1 million for the organization and have provided more than 2,700 scholarships. A native Detroiter, Strather is on a mission to create the next generation of developers and to help redevelop Detroit's great neighborhoods. We are honored to have him on Urban Interest today. Welcome, Herb. How are you?
Thank you so much, Janice. I'm happy to be on the show, and I'm feeling just great. I'm optimistic, of course.
The eternal optimist. Well, let's get to it. Now, I worked in Washington, D.C. for 3 decades for members of Congress, including Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, our former Senator Donald Regal, and our illustrious Congressman John Conyers Jr. And I was also a registered lobbyist before Congress for the commercial building industry back in the 80s. And my sexy issues were underground storage tanks, tax credits, asbestos abatement. So I'm a little familiar with your industry, which is building and development. So we want to find out what's going on with Strathers Associates, as well as how is the state of the housing market in Detroit?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll start with the last question about the housing market in general. People shouldn't get so upset that interest rates are going up if you're investors. It does impact, but it does have a significant impact. But rents, remember, have went up even faster than interest rates. So it have offset the interest rates. And there's a tremendous, and in the future, their rents are going to be going up quite a bit. People got to realize that it is a great time to buy a house, everyone. And while I'm at it, I want everybody to know the city got $6 million grant to give away 240 grants for $25,000 a piece to the homeowners. $25,000, Detroit Down Payment Assistance, DetroitDPA.com. Let's talk about Grand River Greenfield. As you know, I developed the corners here, the northeast corner and the northwest corner, and we acquired the Mammoth building many, many years ago, and it's been one challenging thing to do. The industry itself changed from malls just to flats, the strips, and the cost of renovating it, especially, post-COVID, has been so tremendous. It costs $350 a foot to build, whereas before it would have cost half that, maybe $200 a foot. But where can you get the rents to support such a huge construction cost? It is a gigantic and significant gap. So the city issued RAP 1, and they asked for proposals. We turned our proposals in. The mayor obviously liked it. He gave us a support letter, but there was only one winner, and that was the Detroit Downtown Partnership, I believe. So there was 55 applications. So we didn't get the first round. So we're gearing back up now, and we're planning on submitting our round by the 15th of this month, somewhere around the 15th of next week sometime we plan to submit. We're on our final drafts. But Janice, I got to tell you something. This is very emotional for me because, I'm going to build something there that I've wanted for our kids our whole life. As you know, I'm an optimist. I built 150 optimist clubs. I'm a youth advocate. And what I want is to save the lives of kids that have not yet been born in Detroit. So not only are we going to do this fabulous STEAM center, which I'm going to show you, we want a charter school all the way, and it's going to be for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs. I do not want to raise the kids to work for somebody. Jesus, I've been in a meeting 2 hours a day with this guy, 44 years old. He's an Arab. And they're cool, but they are aggressive. They are entrepreneurs. Whatever happened to us? I tell you what happened. We were born in the United States, and they wasn't. When people get in the United States, they can't wait to make it. It doesn't have to be Arabs. It could be Africans. It could be any nationality except us.
Well, Herb,
the most controlled people there is. Now, so I'm building this for all times, and I want you to see it. Now, let me back up a little bit and just tell you, I got Mel Grubbs. He's the CEO, the former CEO of Detroit Science Center, and former president of Detroit, president and CEO of the Detroit Science Center, Michigan Science Center, and Cranbrook Science Center in former years. He's joined us. We're going to do a mixed-use development that consists of about 10,000 square feet of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And we're going to have school buses all day long during the early morning coming by. And we're going to take them through all the great things and exercises. And there's going to be another 40,000 square feet of just fun. Things are a lot of fun. And then we're going to build MITS, Motown in the Schools. We're going to build the most fabulous recording studio in the world. It's going to have the bells and the whistles. You can walk in there, and when you finish singing, it'll give you your music, videos, everything. Because this is Detroit. Detroit got talent. We got to bring our talent back. And so this facility is going to be called the Experience. It's a STEAM center, and it's edutainment, a family entertainment center focused on edutainment. In other words, it's entertainment with educational significance. In other words, we can trick you into learning. Now, let me tell you something. Our kids are really smart. Let's get that straight. And if you think that you're smarter than them, I got something for you. Just take out your game. Just take out your phone, and you play them. They're going to beat you.
Every time.
They're going to beat you bad. So they're very smart. I get a chance to fight the good fight for them. And here's the picture. You're the first one to see this, but remember this now. This is also a draft, okay? So next week, we got our little final things, and I'll show you what's going to change. Now, I got to explain this picture to you. Here it goes. Buckle up. That's it. Now, you want to know what is I'm looking at? Okay, this on the left is the far corner. This is Grand River Greenfield right here. This little thing is supporting coming out. It is not going to be called the Mammoth Center. It's the Experience with an exclamation point. This is Greenfield. We have our parking spaces. We're going to push back Greenfield. And this is all retail here, all retail. We want a lot of restaurants. And up above is the fanciest apartments you have ever seen with rooftops and all of this kind of stuff. This is what we're going to do. It's going to cost us $20 million, and we're going to ask the city. We're not going to ask the city for anything more than what they would do with the other developers. Whatever the gap is, we're going to look for the gap funding because you can hardly build these projects without significant amounts of cash. And there's a whole bunch of construction going on in the city. I'm concerned that we're not engaged enough. There are challenges. This project here had a whole bunch of challenges. We could have very well built it a long time ago when the opportunity zones came. We thought we had it. As a matter of fact, we had it fully leased 4 years ago. And and the opportunity zone was coming, but for some reason, we didn't get the opportunity zone. I couldn't believe it. The corner in Detroit didn't get it. So we said, well, what's the next move then? But what we did, we took Foreman Mills, who was leasing the building, and we brought him across the street to Tower Center. Now, Tower Center, it was easier to build. It was an easier build out. It cost $3.5 million to build them their space out. And to build out the Mammoth building would have been 8 or 9. It would have been significant. But we built it out without any city help. We didn't get a penny or anything. And so I think we need to kind of look and see how the city deals with minorities too, because I'm not so sure we get all this. It's not a question. I'm not so sure. We have 5% of the development, ladies and gentlemen. I might as well submit. We got 5%.
5% of the development. So the Experience on the corner, what type of timeline do you have for it? If all goes well, perfect world.
In the perfect world, we tear the building down this year because I'm going to go to the city and I'm going to tell them, I want you to tear it down. Now, this is important, this property be built and developed. And I'm just one person. It's way more important than me. If someone can build it better, I'll step back. I don't think they can. I think I can build it so well you won't believe it. And we would certainly joint venture with others. Give us some minority joint ventures here, if you don't mind.
So let's talk about what would be in the experience. I think you mentioned it would be a 2-story indoor amusement park, charter school, and STEAM after school activities. What do you envision?
Right. Okay, now this is it. The actual 2 stories is basement and first floor. The basement is really the huge STEAM center. They got 10,000 square feet on the first floor, and the floors are cut out too on the inside. So you got like a 2-story kind of deal going on there. So the basement in the first floor is for edutainment, STEAM center, fun, and restaurants. We're gonna have 3 or 4 restaurants in there. We think that's very important. And then we're going to have housing on the top. Now, this rendering is an initial rendering he kind of pulled together for us. We've been working on this for about a month, and we had to cut off one of the layers because we had 4 stories all together, and we've cut it down to 3. We just cut it down to 3 about 10 days ago. And our signage is going to be STEAM center, it's going to be a lot more fancier. And I know it's hard to see this. When we do our final rendering, we're going to more or less do it at the point where you can see the point, and not just the greenfield side. Now, the charter school is not going to be inside of this facility. There is a vacant school next door to on Whitcomb and Grand River, is just sitting there. So we put an offer in. We haven't got it, but we want to get it. We also would love to take and have Tower Center, that bridge. Now, that bridge is damaged, but I don't think that bridge, that's not my bridge, by the way. That's the state's bridge.
Okay.
And they have not maintained it, but I think it can be saved still. I think that it still can be saved. It'll be great because we'll have a high school in the Tower Center, and they can walk over. That's our hope.
Now, just so everyone can have a context, we're talking about the old Federals building, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The old Federal building, which is now the Mammoth, which is going to get replaced, torn down. Now, we were going to develop the Mammoth building, no question about it. I can show you the picture. It was beautiful, but it was $350 a foot. This will cost us $200 a foot after we tear the building down, so we can build it. But it was impossible to build it. Not impossible, but impractical. You know, it wouldn't make any sense. Nobody would give us it was a significant gap. The $20 million was the amount of the gap almost.
Now, is the city going to fund the demolition, or do you have to bear the cost of the demolition?
Well, I have to work all of that out with the city. The city has filed a lawsuit to tear the building down. I told them they could just, look, I'm with you. You don't even have to go through all of that. So I'm going to get with the law department, and we're going to submit our RAP application. We do not have any problem with the building being torn down by the city, except that it will cost twice as much if the city tore the building down, a little bit more than twice as much. It'll cost them $2.5 million to tear it down. If I tore it down, it'd be $1.1 million. You may say, why? What's the significant difference? You know, it is a significant difference when you come to what we call prevailing wages. In other words, if you tear something down with the city, you have to use union wages. You have to you got to go all the way down the line, and it costs twice as much. It costs just about twice as much. So I don't know if the city tears it down, they're going to have a wider gap with me or anyone else. I mean, you know, the thing about the city laws that are good, though, is that even if the city took this building, the equity is still, I would still have equity in the building over and above a sale or another developer coming in. The land would be valued, and anything over and above, well, you know what? That's kind of an interesting concept, because if you tear the building down, you're going to put another $1 million debt on it, or $2 million. That could be a problem if the city tore it down, I would say. I say the best thing I can do is to negotiate a demolition myself, and we're in the process of that.
Okay, the demolition. And then, of course, even if the city were to demolish it, you still retain the rights of the land ownership.
Well, you still have the land. I owe the city $1 million, or $2 million, and I would go to them and ask them to give me some gap funding for the difference.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to stay tuned on this amazing mammoth development that you have told us about. My understanding is the edutainment side of it will be bumper cars, a bowling alley, rock climbing, roller coaster rides, go-kart, bumper cars, all of those things to engage our children. And what else?
Well, it's not going to be your regular one though. We're going to these conventions right now to figure out, does that fit? Does this fit? What do we want? We don't want a regular, just purely fun. Now when you go out to Dave & Buster's, they have things that challenge you out there, but it's a lot of fun. It's going to be very challenging games, and we want to find the games that'll make them smarter. They figure this out. We're gonna trick our kids into learning.
Fantastic. So we're going to stay tuned for that affiliation or collaboration with the Science Center and with our schools, a charter school possibly, and with Herb Strather. Thank you so much. I wish we could stay more, but we got to go on to the next segment.
Well, that's good, and I'll be back.
Absolutely. We look forward to it to get more information. So we've had a wonderful time. I mean, just amazing information from Herb Strather, the chairman of Strather Associates, and we look forward for an update. Stay tuned. We will return after this message.
Thank you very much.
For a history you won't forget and an experience you'll always remember, visit the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History with engaging educational programs, lectures, entertainment, and enlightening exhibits. You'll gain valuable insight and be motivated to inform others. The Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, located in the heart of Midtown Detroit. For more information or to schedule a tour, visit thewright.org.
Our next guest is Jarroll Sanders, who has an entrepreneurial spirit since she was 10 years old, working in her family's business. She brought process management changes to their operation and increased sales of their ornamental storm door enterprise by 300% in 1 year after she joined the company full-time after college. She went on to join the Mobil Oil Company, bringing more process management improvement measures, which included helping dealers and bulk plant operators manage successful enterprises. She's received accolades from Fortune 500 companies, including Southwestern Bell, a division of AT&T, which led her to launch her own firm. We are glad to have her join us today. Welcome, Jarroll. How are you?
I am doing well and very pleased to be with you today.
Well, tell us, what other enterprises are under the umbrella of, is it Jarroll Consulting?
Jarroll Consulting. Well, we have been a corporation that has served Fortune 500 companies across the nation, reinventing processes and taking upon ourselves the resolution of complex corporate problems. Which included, in fact, a rewrite of the Internal Revenue Service taxpayer notices, which was deemed the most high-profile writing contract in the country. And I've been involved in a number of business entities, helping businesses refine their operations and through process improvement and quality management.
Okay, so the IRS, everybody, that piques everyone's ears that you were on the ground floor of helping us, the customer, be more informed. That's wonderful. So I'm going to run through them. For chiefexecutives.com. What is that?
For chiefexecutives.com is a new company that I formed, which is will deliver top-notch business training to businesses across the country. It includes its flagship product is a 12-part business series called Your Own Business, Your Pathway to Wealth. And those who have reviewed it say it's akin to an MBA program. It makes very complex business processes and like accounting very simple to understand, but it really provides business owners with the kind of aptitude needed to successfully operate a business.
We were just talking with Herb Strather, and he, of course, is trying to get the next generation of developers online. When I was at Howard University, at their television station, my dean came to me because she saw that I had created an incubator with my interns to develop their own television production companies, because everyone's not going to be in front of the camera. And she was so inspired by it. She recognized which was Howard University, was turning out employees, an employee mindset, as opposed to entrepreneurs, small business and large business owners. And so there I was not on a tenure track. I was a lecturer and I worked at the TV station, but I showed them, she put me in front of all these other deans of all the other colleges inside of Howard University to show them how I put together this program. So that sounds very much like what you've done to allow our youth to go into business as opposed to working for someone else all of their life. How about the writing company? Tell us about that.
The writing company served Fortune 500 companies, and it was the company under Jarroll Consulting that procured the IRS contract. But what we did is we developed technical documents, marketing products, advertising products for Fortune 500 companies, for small businesses, and we developed just an excellent reputation for quality delivery.
Depeche Advertising and Design. Let's walk through that.
Depeche Advertising and Design was the division that provided advertising. We developed advertising programs that often, for example, even with IRS, when we rewrote notices, there needed to be a marketing program to publicize and to make people aware of what the features were. So we were tasked with accomplishing that. So it was an excellent complement to our writing division, the writing company, and basically evolved from the writing company, because we started out writing technical documents and evolved into video and all manner of communications and process refinement.
And making, for instance, the IRS more user-friendly to its customers as opposed to what we've been accustomed to in the past. Were you responsible for the rollout of their online account for customers, for the IRS to be able to interact with them and get those notices quicker than the snail mail?
Well, there's a real story behind my IRS contract, because in fact, I made a movie about it that has won multiple awards. It's called My Empty Chair, the Jarroll Sanders story. Essentially, I was scheduled to do town hall meetings with Clinton and Gore. I had complete access to the commissioner and produced what IRS said was unparalleled notices as far as redesign and the whole quality of the language. So we introduced all of the refinements. And at that point, 2 Treasury executives actually terminated our contract and gave it to a friend who didn't even have a company. And so we have been pursuing that. We have the most incredible documentary evidentiary file, which was provided to us essentially by the contracting officers, who were non-Americans, but they were so concerned and disturbed by what they witnessed occur on the contract that they provided that file to us. So we've been pursuing that for a number of years, and in the course have learned that what we experienced is also being encountered by a number of minority contractors. Very much in the way that Herb alluded to with respect to minority participation. That's another thing I was involved in. I trained major corporations on behalf of the Minority Business Council on better ways to do business with African American businesses, and so that also is one of my skill sets.
Now, was that under Diversent? Was that the happening
exactly.
under the Diversent
exactly.
part of your umbrella companies?
Exactly. We developed diversity inclusion training, but also developed, as I said, it was inclusion training for CEOs of Enterprise, of Albarisi Construction. We actually brought the executives in And we help them understand that really it's counter, for example, intuitive to expect that you're going to have a company mentor a minority company with the prospect that the minority company is going to eventually pull from the majority company. So we began to explore concepts and look and invent out of the box strategies for helping minority, which I don't really like that word, but for helping Black-owned businesses, I say not participate, but to own the entire pie.
Absolutely, because we're so accustomed, Black-owned businesses, to being the sub contractor and not the prime. And that's the problem, because the money is being the prime, the primary contractor. Glad to know that. Let's just stay on that. What are your thoughts about the DEI movement, the diversity and equity and inclusion movement? Do you really find that our major corporations are being inclusive, or did they just post George Floyd hire that chief diversity officer? But has there really been inclusive measures and that we have metrics on, that these major corporations have brought in more Black Americans as well as others? Because we know that affirmative action really benefited more so white women as opposed to its intended Black Americans at that time, as well as others that were moving into the foreground. What are your thoughts on the DEI movement?
Well, I think that that's exactly what it is a movement. But I don't think it is effective, and because they're not statistical goals. Anyone who understands affirmative action knows that we saw some of the most progressive achievements with respect to Black professionals when people were looking at the numbers. The numbers mean everything. And in fact, I wrote a book called The Physics of Money. If you've got my dollar, I don't. And I talk extensively about that. Another thing is that with the diversity inclusion movement is that we as African Americans are not demanding innovative the implementation of innovative concepts. For example, when I was developing training, I invented this concept called inverted subcontracting. I actually had Albarisi Construction and Schnucks Corporation function as my subcontractor as we were going to pursue a major signage deal on a courthouse project. And the largest sign company in the country said, "Hey, Albarisi, hey, Schnucks, we're not going to do business with you all if you proceed with that." So we need companies that are willing to stand tall and engage in new, innovative concepts. There are also some things that we're failing to do. If we, the legal decisions from the affirmative action Supreme Court decisions, those still hold. In Detroit, for example, we still aren't conducting disparity studies. A disparity study is a numerical measure of the degree to which a percentage of a specific population, based upon its representation, is achieving contracts. We aren't using those tools. So the movement is just that. If there were metrics, if we were measuring, then we could see what the outcomes are. And that corporations have been, they'll measure, even the federal government. If we were measuring how many contractors encounter what I encountered, then that would tell the story of how Black contractors are performing in the federal contracting arena, because these are companies that have grown, have spent years successfully performing. They march into the federal contracting arena. Some political agent or a friend of a political agent sees something that company has that they want to benefit from. They cause the company to fail. And then guess what? They move in, they take the contract, they steal the company's intellectual property, and then they live as millionaires forever and ever and ever.
I'm so interested in the books and the film that you produced on this, because that was my thought when George Floyd was unfortunately murdered by public officials, the police in Minnesota. And there was this feel-good movement of DEI. And there's even, I've seen Cornell University has rolled out a curriculum on DEI. But really, what has that impacted is the overriding issue. And I just didn't think that there was any impact because I'm not seeing any numbers. I think it's a feel-good movement. And I want to just segue into that because I know that you have a proposal, the Uniform Reporting Law Enforcement Improvement Act. Let's talk a bit about that.
This is perhaps the most important thing I've done in my life. It is, let me back up. I was present in the community when Michael Brown was killed. I participated because I was invited by a member of DOJ to participate in meetings that were attended by Ferguson influencers, many of whom you now see on, major shows, by DOJ representatives and the very law enforcement agents who were helping to conceal, basically, the execution of Michael Brown. And from that meeting, it became clear to me that DOJ's role in these instances is to swoop in, calm the natives, to introduce some reforms if needed, and then move on to the next problematic policing situation. I concluded after monitoring the ground, which I did daily, that if we wanted a real solution for policing, we had better devise it ourselves. And so I convened with a number of mothers I met out on the ground, and I said, guess what? We're going to fix this problem, because if we don't, it will continue. And so for 1 year, I researched, we met in a library room, and we devised the Uniform Reporting Law Enforcement Improvement Act, which is the most sweeping legislative proposal ever developed.
Okay. So let's just talk a little bit. I'm just going to read the first paragraph. The pattern or practice investigation is one of the primary tools used by the United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, and the Special Litigation Section to discourage the use of unconstitutional policing practices such as racial profiling and excessive use of force. Let's talk a little bit about that under the Improvement Act that you're mentioning. This administration is looking at the police reforms, which we've not seen any happen. Tell us more about the meat of the act that you're thinking of, and have you had any buy-in from the old school civil rights organizations, NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, Urban League, National Action Network, Rainbow Coalition? Have they put their arms around your proposal?
They have not. The obstacle we have confronted is that we've done something that's never been done before. The pattern of practice investigation is emanates from federal legislation. The solution to policing is to standardize policing throughout the nation. And in order to do that, you have to federalize policing. And up until now, no one has found a way to federalize policing because there's a case called Prince v. United States, a legal case, opinion that was rendered by the U.S. Supreme Court that says that the federal government cannot charge a state of Michigan, cannot enact a law and then charge a state of Michigan with carrying out that law on the federal government's behalf. So what we did is we used technology. In my former life, I was also I designed major systems while I was at Southwestern Bell, so I have some knowledge of computing. We use technology to find a way to confer upon the federal government, the Congress, first of all, the power to enact legislation that would standardize policing across the country. And we use computing as a way that would allow the Department of Justice under the executive branch to actually manage and control the day-to-day activities outlined in the Equality in Policing Act in order to bring those standards and to actually capture minute by minute the actions of every single law enforcement agent and private duty security officer in the United States. And I'm talking about federal, state, local. I'm talking about police officers, federal prisons, juvenile facilities, because we have no idea how many kids are dying in these facilities and how many people are dying in penal institutions. So there's never been anything like it. And because of that, before constitutional lawyers will even look at it, because it has been so long held that it is impossible, and we are non-attorneys, who, by the way, I did write a case of first impression, a legal case, which most lawyers don't do, but they are unwilling to give it the attention it deserves. Now, recently, I was able to engage a constitutional lawyer, actually two, who, after looking at it, the first response was, you can't do that. After they engaged with me, they said, we think you found a way to completely avoid the problem altogether. So we are working hard right now to develop academic partnerships with constitutional lawyers who can put their stamp of approval and say, this actually meets the requirements outlined in Prince v. United States.
Now, when you say we, who is the we, and how do we, the city of Detroit, as well as others in the Black community, engage, and what is the public engagement part of this that we need to be involved in?
Okay, the public engagement part is to contact your representative and say that we deem this to be a viable proposal, because the George Floyd Act will deliver very little. It persuades by using grant funds. This act holds officers criminally liable for failing to carry out the provisions of the act. So the people can get involved by saying, you know what, if this is not constitutionally viable, we have a right to know that. See, we're asking for the criticism because we know that what we develop can withstand the scrutiny. So those listening and those hearing my voice, contact your congressional representative and say, we want you in a public forum to bring in the constitutional resources, to bring in Onus Inc. And let's have the kind of exchange that is so customary when white segments of the community is innovating. We need that back and forth, that exchange, so that we can demonstrate that this act meets the conditions and far beyond what is outlined in the Prince v. United States legal case.
So, Jarroll, I spent 30 years in Washington on Capitol Hill, as well as in academia. And we want to let everyone know the Uniform Reporting Law Enforcement Improvement Act. I was a Obama appointee, so I worked in the White House Office of Presidential Correspondence. Everyone, take this down. Uniform Reporting Law Enforcement Improvement Act, and just go
also known, if I can say, known by a short name as the Equality in Policing Act. That's the short name.
The Equality in Policing Act. Go to www.whitehouse.gov. and you can do /contact. There you can input the information and it will go right to the president and the vice president. All you do is drop down box and say to the president of the United States, and you can enter this information so that we can weigh in a public engagement manner. To that end, do you think President Biden is sincere about police reform?
I do not. I think that African American voters are often placated. President Biden knows about the Equality in Policing Act. Our public engagement has, I have appeared on over 1,000 shows, the Carl Nelson Show routinely in Washington, D.C. We've actually lobbied Capitol Hill at least twice, sent everyone on Capitol Hill the legislative proposal, and sat in legislators' office for hours discussing this proposal. Again, if there is a real interest in advancing policing reform, then I don't think we would have had an act that was developed literally in it seemed a number of days or weeks following the killing of George Floyd. And our act was actually harvested, the less important aspects of it, in the creation of the George Floyd Act. And we know that because we introduced innovations that had never been discussed before. So here we have to become change agents. We have to evidence agency whereby we take ownership of resolving the problems that plague us. And that's going to mean impressing upon President Biden and other political leaders that we're not settling for your solutions anymore. We want you to enact those that we've devised because we've put the time and investment in to make sure that they will actually accomplish the changes that we need.
One more question along that line for the Equality in Policing Act. Has it been introduced as a bill by any member of Congress in the House or Senate?
No. When we first presented this bill, first sent it up, we were called, and I cannot remember which legislator did it, called us and asked us, have you shown this to anyone? And I said, yes, it's actually, we've been on radio, et cetera, discussing. They said we can't touch it. So there's not been, we were careful in the way that we handled this. We actually didn't want we didn't want to just take it and put it in the hands of legislators because we felt they would neuter it. And then we would walk away with something that wasn't what we wanted. So our strategy involved educating a great number of Americans on what was in the act so that when they saw a competing act, they would know that it didn't measure up. And that is exactly what happened when the George Floyd Act was introduced. I happened to tune into the Carl Nelson radio show, and the callers, after Maxine had departed from talking about the George Floyd Act, were saying, they stole Jarroll's act. Well, that was rather, actually, our act it has much more to it. But the fact that people understand that there's some real teeth in this act is crucial. And now we feel that we've done sufficient education through press releases, et cetera. Not that we're done, but we've done sufficient advertising so that we can now move forward to the next phase, which is working to get the stamp of approval from a constitutional lawyer. And we have a number of clergy who have aligned with us to do that. To develop an academic partnership to get that stamp of approval. And once we get that, then the legal community will be forced to acknowledge that this act is viable, credible, and should be taken seriously.
In a perfect world, who would you want to introduce this act in the U.S. Congress, House and/or Senate?
We've thought about a number of individuals that we think would be effective. And if you don't mind, I, at this point, would like to, I'd rather get the commitment before I name the name.
Okay. Would the Congressional Black Caucus members be involved as a caucus to wrap their arms around it?
They were amongst the first we approached. And I can assure you, we were actually scheduled even to appear on a Zoom call together, and they didn't show. They definitely, I've sat in their offices. I've sat in Cory Booker's office. I've sat in just about every member's office with the parents of mothers who've had children killed by law enforcement. There was not the kind of commitment that I thought we should have seen, and that commitment seemed to surface right before the George Floyd Act, before, a political campaigns. But I've been told that unions this is very difficult for political reasons for people to make decisions to back, but we don't care about that. We care about the lives of our family members, our community members, as well as white Americans who are being killed at rates that, they simply are not publicized. This really, at its core, it is a dysfunctional system, and a dysfunctional system affects everyone that is a part of that system. And white Americans are also being killed at unacceptable rates by law enforcement agents, but that is not talked about, because as long as it can be characterized as a black-white problem, then they can polarize and make it more difficult to advance this kind of a solution.
Well, we're going into the 2024 election cycle, and we do look forward to hearing more about this proposal and what we, the people, can do to help lift it. We have been joined today by Jarroll Sanders, activist, entrepreneur, and we are so delighted. Wish we had more time, but unfortunately we've got to wrap. Thank you for stopping by, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. Stay tuned. We will return after these messages.
These my dads make it hurt.
Today, we bring you the first part of our global broadcast exclusive conversation.
The streets of Tahrir have once again been filled.
Key issues here at the United Nations Climate Change Conference remain unresolved.
Police are saying the protesters to move further and further away.
I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!
Be sure to click subscribe and check out our channels along with the award-winning Democracy Now!, all available 24/7. I'm Janice Hazel, and we'll see you next time on Urban Interest.